today, President Biden is expected to sign a bill that gives the U.S. semiconductor industry a really huge boost.
White House correspondent Kellen Howell is standing by with more on what's in the legislation and then what comes next. Hey again, Kellen.
Good morning, Lindsay. The president is expected to sign this bipartisan $280 billion CHIPS and Science Act in the Rose Garden at about 10 a.m. And there's going to be other lawmakers, business leaders, and union representatives participating in this event in just under an hour here. Now, what this bill does is it really puts a lot of investments into the semiconductor industry here in the United States with the overall goal of boosting domestic manufacturing, shoring up those supply chains, and then ultimately improving U.S. competitiveness with countries like China when it comes to semiconductors. So let's get into a breakdown of what exactly this $280 billion is going to get here. The first is that this bill provides more than $52 billion off the top for semiconductor research, development, manufacturing, and workforce development. Then the bill also includes 25% tax credits to incentivize semiconductor manufacturing. There's also going to be $10 billion for the Department of Commerce to invest in regional tech hubs. And then there's further investments in tech engineering and mathematics research. And the White House is already saying that companies just in the last week since the news of the passage of this bill broke, they've already been announcing further investments in semiconductors in response. And that amounts so far to about $50 billion. The first is from Micron, announcing $40 billion in the last week in new memory chip manufacturing. And then Qualcomm and Global Foundries are also announcing a $4.2 billion expansion of one of their upstate New York chip plants. And so the hope here and the impact on, everyday Americans, Lindsay, is really going to be that in the long run, as more companies invest in semiconductor manufacturing, that is going to deal with those supply chain shortages and help lower the cost of things like cars and other electronics that have really become a lot more expensive in the wake of COVID-19 supply chain issues.
All right, Kellen Howell live in Washington. Thanks so much.
And joining us now to discuss the significance of this legislation is Christopher Miller, assistant professor of the Fletcher School at Tufts University. He's also the author of the new book, Chip War, The Fight for the World's Most Critical Technology. It comes out this fall. Chris, congrats on the new book. Can you just explain to our viewers who may not be following this issue too closely why this CHIPS Act is so important and how it's going to benefit them?
Well, the entire economy depends on semiconductors, from computers to smartphones to data centers to cell phone networks. And today, most of the semiconductors that Americans consume are produced abroad, largely in East Asia, in particular in a number of geopolitical hotspots like Korea and Taiwan, which are at risk in case of an outbreak of war in East Asia. And I think the visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan illustrated just how unstable this region has become and just how dangerous it is to have this fundamental technology produced almost entirely abroad. The CHIPS Act is intended to change that by having more manufacturing of chips in the U.S.
Let's talk about that visit by her. The U.S. depends heavily, as you were just saying, on Taiwan's semiconductor industry. Speaker Pelosi last week met with Taiwan's biggest semiconductor manufacturer during her visit to the island. And I want to take a listen actually to why Senator Lindsey Graham says the island is so important. Let's listen.
Why does anybody care about Taiwan? 90% of the high-end chips for refrigerators, the F-35, and cars are made in Taiwan. How would you like the Chinese Communist Party to own that whole market? We need supply chain break from China.
Comments, how could the growing tensions between China and Taiwan impact the industry we rely on?
Right, that there's a real risk that China tries to increase pressure or even attack Taiwan. And if they were to do so, our ability to access advanced chips would be severely imperiled. The reality is that Taiwan's most advanced chip producer, a company called TSMC, makes the most advanced chips in the world. And not only that, they've got the production capacity that the entire world relies on. Around 1/3 of new computing power each year is produced on Taiwan. And if that were to be severed, if China were to blockade or attack Taiwan, we'd really struggle to produce the computing power that we rely on in all the products that we buy.
So how long is it going to take for this to be really manifested for customers here, whether it's buying cars, refrigerators, whatever it may be that uses these semiconductors? How long is it going to take to manufacture them and create this distance from China that the Biden administration is apparently trying to do?
Well, it's not going to happen overnight. The reality is that right now the U.S. only produces about 10 or 15% of the chips that it uses onshore. And to be honest, we're never going to onshore all the chips we produce, nor should we try. I think the goal is diversification of supply. And right now, we've got a concentration of supply in a number of regions that are facing a lot of instability. So the CHIPS Act will have an effect. They'll encourage more production in the U.S. and simultaneously other governments like Japan and in Europe are encouraging chip industries there as well. And so over the next 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to have a more diversified supply chain than we got today. But that doesn't mean we're going to have completely onshore chip production, nor is that something we should realistically try to produce.
And just briefly, I want to get another quick plug in for your new book called Chip War. Is this much broader than the U.S. and China here? What can you tell us? Give us a scoop inside your new book.
Well, it is broader than the U.S. and China. And today, any advanced chip relies on technology and materials and intellectual property from at least a dozen different countries. And all of these countries are jockeying for control over this technology, which is fundamental to everything that we rely on. And the U.S. for a long time has left this struggle simply to private companies. But when you've got the Chinese government pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into its chip industry, when you've got other countries subsidizing as well, the reality is that this isn't simply a struggle for companies. This is a struggle between countries as well. And it's good that both Congress and the Biden administration has finally woken up to this.
And just briefly, is this going to ease up the supply chain issues, or is it going to are the impacts going to be too far down the road to have such an immediate effect?
It's going to take time. The reality is that from the time you start building a new chip facility to the time it's actually producing new semiconductors is measured not in weeks or months, but in years. So we shouldn't expect an immediate impact. It'll be felt over the next half decade or so.
Christopher Miller, assistant professor at the Fletcher School at Tufts University and the author of the new book, Chip War. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.